chapter 12. We preach on Sundays, but we dig deep on Wednesdays and Thursdays, so it's hard to keep track of where we are. I think we're a little bit ahead on our Bible study, but we're going to at least start chapter 12 today. I think we left off, so we get caught up on chapter 11. We left off with Abram's father, and Abram and his brother and their couple of family members left Ur of the Chaldeans, left that home, and started off to a land where God was going to show them. We know it was going to be Canaan, the land of Canaan, which will eventually be called the Promised Land. They got about halfway there, part of the way there, and Terah, the father, said, "This is as far as I'm going. I'm not going any farther. This is good enough for me." I mean, I'm putting words in his mouth because we don't know what he said, but whatever it was, they didn't go any further, and he was the one that stayed there with them, and he died. And then that brings us to chapter 12. You with me? Yeah. Genesis chapter 12. Now the Lord had said to Abram, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you." Before we move on, I think we need to pay attention to a couple of things in this first verse. One is, now the Lord had said to Abram. The way that is written, it's a past tense. It means that God already said, he already told him that. So when Terah, it says back in chapter 11, Terah took all the family and they left their land and they went to God had already told Abram at that point, you need to leave your land, the land of your fathers, and go to a land I will show you. So a couple of things happened. We don't get the full story. We will one day when I sit down with Abraham in heaven, if he has time for me. But God said, get out of your country and get away from your family. Leave your family. And he didn't. He took his father. He took his nephew. He took the women. And he partially obeyed. He left, but he didn't leave everybody behind. Now, I don't know who's to blame. I'm not going to point fingers, but we know looking further, we read further in this. And that's one of the benefits we have of Genesis. We're talking about all the beginnings, and we're really breaking it down, but we already know what happens. Don't you? We know. I stayed up way too late last night, but I watched the whole New York Jets game. Because Aaron is my guy, and I was so disappointed last year, and I want to catch his games, but you got to have like 3-4 different subscriptions, $100 a month to get the right game on the right day. But Amazon had the game. Of course, I missed most of it, but I know they won. So with just a full joy and a near beer and some chips, I sat down and watched the whole game, and it was great. I enjoyed every minute of the game because I knew they already won it. I knew the outcome. So when he got sacked, I wasn't sweating any of it. I just knew at the end of the day they were just going to stomp all over him. It was great to watch. That's what's going on in Genesis. I mean, there's some stories, there's some things going on, but I know where this is going, and it's good. And every time Abraham messes up, I'm thinking, man, why did you do that? Why? But I know it's going to be all right. God plays out our story that way too. That's why he's so patient with us. And as the song we just sang said, you're always faithful. You've never failed me. It's dark right now. I can't see the light. I don't understand what's happening. I can't see through or past what's going on right now. But you've always been faithful. So I know it's going to be good in the end. Just help me get through today. So in Abraham, we see God says, I'm going to send you to a promised land. And we know, because I looked ahead, they get to the promised land. It's way, way forward up in here. And they make a bunch of mistakes. He's going to get them to the land I will show you. But in the meantime, Abram gets all the credit for being faithful. But we see right off the bat, he takes his dad with him, and he takes his nephew with him, and he takes stuff with him. So let's get back to Scripture. Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. Maybe. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So God comes to Abram, and he makes him this promise, this covenant, this agreement that he says, this is what I'm going to do. 3 things. Last week we talked about making his name great instead of our name great. They wanted to make their own name great instead of God's name great. So he turns everything around and goes to Abram, picks the one guy out and says, I'm going to start over. This is my plan now. Everything has, and God knew the end, so it's not like God's surprised by it. But now the plan is, I'm going to take Abram, I'm going to make a nation out of you. I'm going to make your name great, and your descendants, I'm going to give you a place on this planet that I've made. I'm going to give you a special place. And all that's going to belong to your descendants. And in that place, I'm going to raise up a nation out of you. And this nation is going to be a shining light in a dark world, a city on a hill, salt to the earth. And in your nation, in your name, and in your descendants, all the other nations, all the other families will be blessed by that. This is the plan. I was the God of the whole earth, but they didn't get it. And everybody messed up. And then I was the God of this group, and they made mistakes, and they wanted different gods. So I wiped everybody out. Now I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to make you a nation. And I'm going to make this nation so great because we're going to live together perfectly. And every other nation on the earth is going to want to be like you and come to me. And that's my plan. And I will do 3 things. I will give you a land. I will give you a land. To your descendants, I will give you a land forever. Forever. And I will make you a nation, many nations. You're going to be a great nation, a people. We talked last week, I think you weren't a people before, now you're people. I'm going to make you a people, and your people will be my people. And I'm going to bless all the families of the earth through you. He goes on to say, I will curse him who curses you. So you're going to have my favor upon you, so that whoever treats you nice, I treat nice. Whoever treats you badly will get punished by me. I have your back. I will step in. There's some truth to that if you look through the history of the world. If you go back through our history and you look from the 30,000 feet view of how things went, the nations that persecuted the Jews were destroyed. Their kingdoms fell, no matter how great they were. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, eventually they should have lasted forever. They were kingdoms beyond compare. And then the Greeks came in and they destroyed Jerusalem, and they were soon, within a few generations, gone because Rome came in. And Rome set them up, and then pretty soon, just a few short years after the Romans decide to kill the Apostle Paul and burn Jerusalem, the Roman Empire falls. And throughout history, those who curse you, I will curse. Which is why it's such a big deal. It's irony, it's sovereignty, it's biblical that we're making such a big deal about who's on Israel's side and who isn't right now. Who is for Israel? Why is it why is that? Why are there protests? Why is that? Because from the beginning, God has set aside a people of his own and said, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And there's always been the enemy who says, curse them, destroy them. If I can get rid of God's people once and for all. And God, in his time, steps in and does that. This is a book of today, not a book of ancient history. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. Here's our problem. Well, here's my problem. Might be yours. God says, this is what I want you to do. I want you to leave that. That's not important. This is what's important. I've got a place for you to go. I got a job for you to do. And I say, great, I'm going to do it. I just need to take, a couple of things and pack a couple of bags. And I want to take my brother with me and my nephew. Oh, and I can't leave my dad behind. And I want to do this. And I take all this stuff. So Abram, he's got a job. I'm going to go. For the second time, it's almost like God said, look, Abram, I told you once. All right. You stopped here, that's fine. Your dad's dead now. Now I'm telling you to leave your family, leave your things behind, and go to this land. And Abram goes, okay, I'm going to go. And then he gets, okay, guys. And while they were there, what happened? They accumulated stuff. They accumulated stuff. And you're thinking, well, it's family. How can we leave our family behind? But how many know that sometimes family... And when we look ahead, Lot was nothing but trouble. Lot would have been fine. Leave Lot behind. Leave your family behind. No, I'm going to take Lot. I'm taking Lot with me. And while we were here, look at all this stuff. You've blessed me so much. Sometimes we think that the blessings that God has intended for us is stuff. Look what I've acquired. God has been good to me. I've got all these things, and I've got all these friends, and I've got all this stuff. And when it comes time to do something for God, we can't do it because we got to take everything with us, and we got so many things to care for. Oh, I would go, Lord, but I've got to feed Lot and his family. I've got all these servants that you gave me, so I'll get there eventually. But it's a long, because we have so much stuff. People, things that we're responsible for. We gather them, we collect them. And man, oh man, is that me? Maybe, I think sometimes someone is going to be watching this a few years down the road, and I'm going to be so convicted because I got my house, and then, the kids have moved out, but now their bedrooms are full of, you can't come and stay. When the kids move out, we're going to take that to be a guest bedroom. No, it's full of stuff. You can't come right now. It's still, and the bedroom downstairs, it's full of stuff. And we got a she shed, and it's full of stuff. And I got it, we just collect stuff. And wow, we're so blessed. Look at all this great stuff God has given us. And if he said, Mark, I need you to go on a trip, I'd say, okay, but I got so much stuff. Go to the land I'm going to show you. And Abram goes, but he takes all this stuff. And eventually we're going to see that this stuff, especially Lot and his family and all the other people, are going to end up being a hindrance to his prophecy. They're just in the way. And God doesn't condemn him and he doesn't punish him for it. But we see, because we know the end of the game, that it just created so much drama and so many problems. It's no wonder Abraham didn't have Isaac till he was 100. He was so busy taking care of everything else. All right, that's enough. I feel like I'm yelling at you, but it really is your fault. So that's what that's. All right, so we go through, and he took Sarah and his son, and they departed to the land of Canaan, and then Canaan was full of Canaanites. Remember that name? We just learned about it. The son of Ham was Canaan, and all of the trouble that caused. So now we get a few generations down the road, and the land that he is going to give to him is already full of really his descendants, if you go back 10 generations, but they're all idol-worshiping God-haters. And they're in the land that God was supposed to give to all God's people. So now he's going to have to repossess it, reclaim it. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree or oak tree of Moreh. And the Canaanites were then in the land. So he gets to Shechem. Remember that name. And the land is full of, and we talked about it at Bible study, but this trees are special trees. This tree lived a long time. It's a great big tree. It provides shade. In the middle of the desert and all this stuff going on, of course this great big tree is going to attract people. You can get out of the shade. It also means that there must be water there if the tree's living. And this was a significant tree and large, and everybody knew about it. That's where he stops, under the shade of this tree, in the middle of Canaan, the land, in the middle of it. Shechem is still there. Shechem, the word Shechem means shoulder. This is a good translation. Shoulders or shoulder. And if you look at the geography of where it is, there's a mountain on the left, and they're not round, big, tall, jagged mountains. They're rounded hill kind of mountains. And if you look at it down the valley, it looks like two shoulders. And in the middle, Shechem is populated. It's a little city that grew up right in the middle of these two places, two mountains. And we're going to learn about them, Mount Gerizim and Mount Eber. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants, I will give this land, the land he's standing in the middle of. Right now, Shechem, or where Shechem was, is right in the middle of the West Bank under Palestine's occupation. It's still there. And Mount Gerizim and Mount Eber are still right there. And you can see them, and you can see the city that's built down through there in the valley. It's still the same land. And that's the land that God said, I'm going to give to you and your descendants. And eventually, it will belong to God's descendants, Abraham's descendants. And to your descendants I will give this, who had appeared. And he there built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. So Shechem becomes this place, this holy place. Abraham determines, with everybody else that's with him, he stops, he builds an altar, and he says, this is where God showed up. This is where God appeared to me. God blessed me here. And he received the covenant, the promise of this land. He's standing in the middle of it. Probably didn't, run over. Hey, everybody, God just gave me all this. So take your time, but you need to pack pretty soon because he just gave me all of this land. It's all mine now. He was the only one who knew it. Eventually it would come out because Abraham looked forward to the end of the story, to a city not built with hands. So he gives him the land, and he says he builds an altar and he worships there. Sometimes there is a physical place associated with a supernatural event in your life. Do you know a place in your life that's a Shechem? A place where you were there and God he showed up. You could almost hear him, or you could feel him, and you sense that God was there, and it made a difference. Something changed, something moved. I have several Shechems in my life. I have a Shechem where I went from darkness to light. I can remember the spot in a warehouse off of Berryville Avenue in Winchester. He showed up there. He showed up there and changed the trajectory of my life entirely. I have a Shechem. I imagine in my mind, if I went back, when I drive past that, I look, it's changed hands 3 or 4 different times. It's not the same thing anymore. It's not the same. It all looks different. But God appeared to me there. Do you have a Shechem? Do you have a place you can identify? It may be this room. Maybe one of you was here. Maybe this is where God turned everything around. That he spoke to you, that you were convicted, that you confessed, or another church, or the chapel across the street, where one morning, one Sunday, the preacher was preaching, the choir was singing, and man, God, you just felt. Do you have one of those? There should be one of those. I remember when I went into ministry, we were supposed to tell our call story. When did God call you? We had to rehearse it over and over and over again. And I heard so many times, so many Methodist preachers that come through this ranks said, well, I've always been a Methodist. I've always known God. And one of our professors said, no matter what you say, no matter if you were 2 years old or whatever all your life, there still has to be a moment, a time in your life where you were born again. Because you were born in the flesh, but Jesus says you must also be born of the Spirit. So you don't just by osmosis just gradually go from being alive right into being a Christian, being saved. Because we're born outside of that. We're born with the capacity, the propensity, with the desire, with the need for God, but we're separated from God by our sin at birth. There needs to be a moment. It doesn't accidentally happen. You don't just, I guess I believe. I was, now I do. There should be a moment. And we argued that because a lot of them couldn't think of a time when that happened to them. It just was part of their life, all their life. I've always believed. I believe that I have a Shechem. You should probably have a Shechem. And Shechem becomes so cool, if you'll give me a few minutes to bear it out. Because 60 times Shechem is mentioned in the Bible. 60 times. Do you know the story of Shechem in the Bible? So at this place, Abram, he's going to get ready to take a wrong turn here in a minute. But he's worshiping God. God appeared to him. God makes his threefold promise. He said, this is a place. God appeared to me. And he builds an altar and he worships. If we just jump a few pages down the road, just a few pages up, where we have Abraham, and then we're going to have Isaac, then we're going to have Jacob. And Jacob hangs out at Shechem several times. In fact, Jacob in his journeys and his working with God comes back and buys a piece of ground in Shechem. The only really piece of ground that he owns to say it was his. God said it's all yours, but the only proof is that he bought this little piece of ground while he lived there. Ends up burying his wife and dug a well because he lived there for a while. While he was there, his daughter, Dinah, you know that story, won't go into that, but Dinah gets in trouble with the son of the guy who runs the town, the owner of the town, the king of the town, and his name was Shechem. And he attacks Dinah, and the sons come back and revenge him and slaughter everybody and redeem the place. And that happens at Shechem. When Joseph's kids grow up, go to Egypt, I'm going to flash forward. You know the story of Egypt. Joseph dies in Egypt as they become slaves, and makes his brothers promise that when you get to the promised land, when you get to the land that God gave to my father, Jacob, you take my bones with me. And as the Exodus goes and they're going through the wilderness, they finally get to the promised land. They take Joseph's bones and bury him in Shechem. When Moses is talking to the people and say, you're going to inhabit the land, and here's the rules when you get in there. He says, I want you to take these tablets. I want you to take all the people, and I want you to go in between Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebor, Gerizim and Eber, and I want you to pronounce all of the blessings on Mount Gerizim and all the curses on Mount Eber, and there at Shechem, make your declaration of promise to God at Shechem, where Abraham just built an altar generations before. And then when it finally happens and Joshua takes the people in and they possess the land and he brings them all before them and he reads the rules and said, this is what's going to be. And he says, you choose this day. You remember the famous speech? Whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, he's in Shechem making that famous speech before they go and take and possess the land that God had given to his father and his father before him and his father before him. And they're finally now coming in to the land that God had promised to Abraham in that spot in Shechem, where Joseph's buried, going to be buried, where Jacob bought a piece of land, where he built a well. And there's so many other things, 60 times, but the best one is when Jesus and his disciples are walking through. And he says, we got to go through Samaria. And they say, why are you going to go through Samaria? I must needs go. And they get out there in the middle of nowhere, and he says, I need to rest. And he stops by a well. And a woman comes out. You know that story? It's Jacob's well. It's in Shechem. It's Jesus. Try to get my head around this thought that Abram comes to Shechem by this tree, and the Lord shows up and talks to Abram. What's going through Jesus' mind? This is Jesus' Shechem. It was Jesus. It was the Lord who came to Abram. And now he's incarnate in Jesus of Nazareth, walking the earth, and walks to Shechem instead of just appears there. Walks to the well. You know, he knows. You know, I remember when I came and talked to Abraham here. I remember when I saved the kings, when I spoke to Jacob. I remember when I made my promise to Isaac. And here I am, making a promise that I said through you, I told Abraham, all the people of the earth will be blessed by you. All the nations and families of the earth will be blessed by you. And here I am to bless this woman who doesn't deserve blessing or favor, who's from another family, but another nation, and not related, to come to this place, this well in Shechem, where I made the promise the first time, to fulfill my own promise that I will be faithful. Isn't that cool? Do you have a Shechem? Maybe right now you're in the middle of it. And the promise isn't fulfilled, but you believe God's going to work in your life, but it's just dark, it's just strange, it's not happening yet. Well, I want to tell you, I believe I already read the end of your story, and God is going to prosper and favor and deliver. God will come through like he promised. If you are walking in a promise and it doesn't seem real, it's just because the timing hasn't happened yet. I remember when Alex visited, we tried to get him to, was he here someplace? Where are you, Alex? He just showed up because his mom needed him here to help her. Because we didn't have anybody to do what he could do. And she talked him into coming. But he didn't really want to be here, and he was doing other things, and he had other churches. But he came just to help out. And then he got a little bit further. And then we sucked him in and then twisted his arm. But nowhere in earth did he and I believe that we were going to be who we are now. In fact, I didn't even hardly talk to him the first few times he was here helping out. And that has gone from that to maybe I can do this. Can you help out just a little bit while I'm busy? And he worked all the time, full time, comes home, gets on a computer and does plans and stuff for his business at night to make up the difference. And now he's here full time and goes home at night and gets on Bible study apps and studies scripture at night when the kids go to bed. If we'd have said that, nobody would believe it. There's something waiting for you that right now you would say, there's no way that'll never happen. But if God has made a promise, it will happen. We're just in sojourners right now. We're just not there yet. You're just not there yet. But I believe God is going to do great things. I believe it. I believe it. I believe it.